On Christmas Eve, a poor girl was run over while saving the life of a distracted millionaire at the intersection. With her last breath, she revealed her Christmas wish, and he could not hold back his tears. The biting Christmas Eve wind whipped through the deserted streets, carrying snowflakes and the last hopes of Marie. Only 12 years old, her pale face and tired eyes told a story of hardship no child should endure. Her thin fingers, reddened by the cold, clutched a box of matches, her last chance to earn money for her grandmother's medicine. Matches! Who wants to buy matches? Her weak voice echoed through the empty streets, competing with the distant sound of Christmas bells. Marie looked up at the dark sky, remembering the promise she had made to her grandmother that morning. "I'll bring your medicine, Grandma. Don't worry." The words now seemed hollow, swallowed by the cold night and the city's indifference. A few blocks away, in a luxurious office atop a skyscraper, Henry Dunn stared out the window with distant eyes. The reflection in the glass showed a middle-aged man, impeccably dressed, but with deep shadows under his eyes and an expression of worry that even his fortune could not conceal. "Mr. Dunn," his secretary's voice interrupted his thoughts. "The board meeting was moved up to tomorrow morning. They're demanding explanations about the financial discrepancies." Henry nodded without turning. "Thank you, Claire. You can go home now. It's Christmas Eve, after all." Alone once more, Henry ran his hand through his grey hair. How could his company, built over decades, be collapsing so quickly? Accusations of mismanagement, lost contracts, numbers that simply made no sense. Everything seemed like a conspiracy against him. But who could be behind it? Deciding he needed fresh air to clear his mind, Henry grabbed his coat and went down to the street. The contrast between the building's warmth and the cutting cold of the night made him shiver. That's when he saw her. A small figure hunched on the corner, trembling under a coat far too thin for that weather. "Matches? Anyone want to buy matches?" Marie's voice barely reached his ears. Something in that scene touched Henry deeply. For a moment, all his problems seemed insignificant in the face of that child's despair. He began to cross the street toward her, determined to help. It was in that instant that everything changed. The screech of tires on the icy asphalt shattered the silence of the night. A car at high speed came around the corner, skidding on the snow. Henry, distracted by his thoughts, did not notice the imminent danger. Marie, however, saw it all as if in slow motion. Without a second thought, she dropped her precious box of matches and ran toward the unknown man. "Look out!" she shouted, using all the strength of her small body to push Henry out of the way. The sound of the impact was deafening. Where Henry had just been standing now lay Marie's frail body, like a rag doll tossed onto the snow, which quickly turned red. Stunned, Henry crawled toward her. The driver of the car, panicked, sped away into the night, leaving only the echo of his crime behind. "My God, child, why did you do that?" Henry held Marie in his arms, his expensive suit now stained with the girl's blood. Marie opened her eyes with difficulty, her weak breath forming small clouds in the cold air. "The matches," she murmured. "My grandmother needs—" The distant sound of ambulance sirens began to pierce the silence, but Henry knew, with a painful tightening in his chest, that it would be too late. "What's your name?" he asked, struggling against his tears. "Marie," she answered, her voice no more than a whisper. "Please, my grandma." And then, with one last trembling sigh, Marie closed her eyes. Henry remained there, holding the body of the girl who had just sacrificed her life to save his, as the ambulance lights painted the scene in red and blue. At that moment, he did not know that his life was about to change forever, nor that the child's final Christmas wish would be the catalyst for a journey that would reveal long-buried secrets and a conspiracy larger than he could have imagined. Christmas Eve, which should have been a time of joy and celebration, had become the stage for a tragedy that would link the destinies of Marie and Henry in ways neither could have foreseen. As the snow continued to fall, gently covering Marie's body, Henry made a silent promise. He would discover the truth behind this accident, care for Marie's grandmother, and honor the sacrifice of this brave girl. Little did he know that this promise would lead him to uncover not only the mysteries of his own life, but also a web of lies and betrayals that threatened to destroy everything he had built. Christmas night was just beginning, and with it, a story of redemption, justice, and the transformative power of one last wish. The distant howl of sirens tore through the night, but for Henry, the world had narrowed down to the small body in his arms. Marie, the girl who seconds ago was selling matches on the sidewalk, now lay motionless, her life spilling over the snow-stained red. "Hold on, little one," Henry murmured, his voice trembling. "Help is coming." Marie's eyes opened slowly, clouded by pain. "Sir," she whispered, "the matches. I need to sell them." Henry felt a lump in his throat. Even on the brink of death, the girl thought only of her mission. "Don't worry about the matches now, you'll be fine." But both of them knew it was a gentle lie. Marie coughed, a trickle of blood running from the corner of her mouth. "My grandmother," she said with difficulty. "She needs medicine. Please." In that moment, Henry's mind was flooded with flashbacks. He remembered his privileged childhood, Christmases surrounded by expensive gifts and a lavish table. It clashed painfully with Marie's reality, a child forced to work on Christmas Eve to buy medicine. "What is your grandmother's name? Where does she live?" Henry asked, desperate to offer some comfort to the dying girl. "Elise Dawson," Marie replied, her voice barely audible. 27 Chestnut Street, the attic apartment." Henry nodded, committing the information to memory. "I promise, Marie, your grandmother will receive the best medical care, you have my word." A faint smile lit up Marie's pale face. "Thank you, sir. You're a Christmas angel." The words hit Henry like a punch. Him, an angel. The man who minutes ago was worried only about his fortune and reputation. As he held Marie, Henry was transported through his recent memories. The luxurious office atop a skyscraper, meetings with executives in expensive suits, dinners at five-star restaurants. All seemed so empty now compared to the purity and sacrifice of this girl. Marie shivered violently, bringing Henry back to the brutal present. "It's cold," she murmured. Henry took off his cashmere coat and covered Marie, knowing the gesture was futile, yet unable not to do it. "Is that better?" Marie nodded weakly. Her once cloudy eyes seemed to gain a spark of clarity. "Sir," she said, her voice surprisingly clear, "may I ask you something?" "Anything, Marie," Henry replied, tears finally breaking his composure. "Take care of kids like me. There are so many on the streets who need help." The request struck Henry like lightning. In an instant, he saw every time he had passed by street children without even noticing them. How many Maries had he ignored over the years? "I promise, Marie," he said, his voice choked. "I will take care of them, all of them." A final smile lit Marie's face. "Then it was worth it," she whispered. With those words, Marie closed her eyes for the last time. Her body relaxed in Henry's arms, and her last breath mingled with the cold Christmas night air. Henry remained there, holding Marie's lifeless body, as memories continued to flood his mind. He remembered his first company, the pride he felt seeing his name in business headlines. He thought of his yacht, his vacation homes, his luxury cars. All seemed so insignificant now. The sirens grew louder, and soon the ambulance lights illuminated the scene. Paramedics rushed toward them, but Henry knew it was too late. As the medical team took over, Henry staggered away. His gaze fell upon the box of matches lying on the sidewalk, the last remnant of Marie's desperate mission. A police officer approached, notebook in hand. "Sir, we need your statement." Henry nodded mechanically, but his mind was elsewhere. He saw Marie in every child he had ever ignored, in every headline about poverty he had dismissed as the government's problem. "Her name was Marie," he began, his voice trembling. "She saved my life and taught me more about humanity in her last minutes than I learned in decades of business success." The officer wrote quickly, but Henry hardly noticed. His words flowed, not just giving details of the accident, but telling Marie's story, her sacrifice, her final wish. When he finished, Henry turned to the officer with fierce determination in his eyes. "Officer, I need your help finding the driver who fled, not for revenge, but because that man needs to know what he's done." He needs to understand the value of the life he took tonight. The officer nodded, impressed by the intensity of the man before him. We'll do our best, sir. We have some witnesses and security cameras in the area. Henry thanked him and then looked toward the ambulance now carrying Marie's body. And I need someone to go to her grandmother's address, 27 Chestnut Street, attic apartment. Her name is Elise Dawson. She needs to know what happened and that she's not alone. As the ambulance left and the police began to cordon off the area, Henry remained there staring at the bloodstain on the snow, which was quickly dissolving under fresh snowfall. I promise you, Marie, he whispered into the night, your sacrifice will not be in vain. I will take care of your grandmother, of the street children, and I will discover the truth behind what happened tonight. It's the least I can do to honor your last wish. With these words, Henry Dunn turned his back on his old life. The powerful businessman, concerned only with profits and status, had died there on the sidewalk along with Marie. In his place, a man with a mission was born, driven by the child's final breath. As he walked toward Chestnut Street, Henry had no idea that his promise would lead him to unravel a web of conspiracies, threatening not just his company, but the entire city. Marie's last wish would be only the beginning of a journey that would change everything. The snow continued to fall, covering the tracks of the past and preparing the stage for an uncertain but purposeful future. Christmas Eve, which began in tragedy, now carried the seed of redemption, and Henry was determined to make it bloom, no matter the cost. The sun rose over a city transformed by a blanket of white snow, but for Henry Dunn the world remained dark. Images of the previous night, the accident, Marie's pale face, her last breath, haunted him relentlessly. Sitting in his luxurious office, Henry stared at the phone with a mix of determination and dread. He needed to make the call, to begin fulfilling his promise, but every fiber of his being resisted reliving the events of Christmas Eve. Finally, with a deep sigh, he dialed the number for the police. Hello, this is Henry Dunn. I'm calling about last night's accident. The conversation was brief and painful. There were no updates on the hit-and-run driver, but the investigation continued. The officer, speaking compassionately, informed Henry that Marie's body was at the city morgue, awaiting formal identification. What about her grandmother? Henry asked, his voice trembling. Elise Dawson. We haven't been able to locate her yet, sir. The address you gave us seems empty. Henry's heart sank. He thanked the officer and hung up, feeling the weight of his promise grow heavier on his shoulders. Without wasting more time, Henry grabbed his coat and hurried out of the office, ignoring the confused glances of his employees. He had a mission and nothing else mattered. Chestnut Street was a stark contrast to the business district Henry came from. Old run-down buildings lined the road, their peeling facades telling stories of better times long past. Number 27 was a particularly decrepit building. Henry climbed the creaking stairs to the attic, his heart racing with each step. At the apartment door, he hesitated before knocking. Silence. He knocked again, harder this time. Miss Dawson, Elise, it's about Marie. A weak groan came from inside. Alarmed, Henry tried the doorknob. It was unlocked. What he found inside made his stomach turn. The tiny apartment was freezing, the heater clearly broken. On a makeshift bed, an elderly woman trembled under thin blankets, her face pale and sweaty. Elise, Henry approached cautiously. I'm Henry Dunn. I knew your granddaughter, Marie. The woman's eyes opened slowly, feverish and confused. Marie? Where is my little Marie? Henry felt a lump in his throat. How could he tell this sick, fragile woman the truth? Marie, she asked me to take care of you, he said, opting for a half-truth. We need to get you to a hospital, Miss Dawson. Elise tried to sit up but fell back onto the bed, too weak. I can't. We have no money. Marie. Don't worry about money, Henry interrupted gently. I promised Marie I would take care of you, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Without losing another minute, Henry called an ambulance. While they waited, he held Elise's hand, feeling powerless in the face of such suffering. How had he lived so long ignoring the reality of the less fortunate? The ambulance arrived within minutes, and Henry insisted on accompanying Elise to the nearest public hospital. During the ride, He made dozens of calls, moving heaven and earth to ensure Elise received the best possible care. At the public hospital, the brutal reality of inequality hit Henry like a punch. Crowded hallways, outdated equipment, overworked doctors and nurses. Elise was quickly diagnosed with severe pneumonia, worsened by malnutrition and cold. She needs intensive care, the doctor explained, looking exhausted. But all our ICUs are full. We can put her on a waiting list, but... No, Henry interrupted, his voice firm. That's not good enough. I'll transfer her to a private hospital immediately. The doctor looked relieved and worried at the same time. Sir, these transfers can be complicated and expensive. Money is no object, Henry declared. I'll do whatever it takes. In the following hours, Henry moved mountains, calls were made, favors called in record time, Elise was being transferred to the best private hospital in the city. As he followed the ambulance carrying Elise, Henry reflected on how his life had changed in less than 24 hours. Yesterday, he was a man obsessed with profits and status. Today, he was moving heaven and earth to save a woman he didn't even know, all because of a promise made to a girl who had given her life for him. At the private hospital, Elise was immediately taken to the ICU. Henry watched through the glass as doctors and nurses worked tirelessly to stabilize her. A nurse approached him. "Mr. Dunn, Ms. Dawson is asking about Marie. Is she—" Henry closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the truth he would have to reveal. Marie was her granddaughter. She passed away last night, saving my life. The nurse covered her mouth. Shocked. "Oh, my God. I'm sorry. Should I tell her?" Henry shook his head. "No. She's too weak right now. I'll tell her when she's stronger." As the nurse walked away, Henry continued to watch Elise. The steady beep of the heart monitor reminded him constantly of life's fragility. "I promise, Marie," he whispered, placing his hand on the glass. "I will take care of her, and I will do more, much more. Your sacrifice will not be in vain." At that moment, Henry's phone vibrated. It was his secretary, Claire, reminding him of the important board meeting he had completely forgotten. Henry looked at the phone and then back at Elise. His decision was instantaneous. "Claire," he said, answering, "cancel the meeting. In fact, cancel all my appointments for the next few days. I have something far more important to do." Hanging up, Henry sat in the nearest chair, preparing for a long vigil. He didn't know yet, but this was only the beginning of a journey that would lead him to question everything he believed and to face forces determined to keep him in the dark. The weight of the promise made to Marie was heavy, but Henry was determined to carry it, no matter the cost. The days dragged by in the private hospital as Henry kept vigil at Elise's bedside. Her condition improved slowly, but she was still not strong enough to receive the devastating news about Marie. Each time Elise asked about her granddaughter, Henry felt a stab of guilt, replying with evasions that weighed on his conscience. On the afternoon of the third day, while Elise slept, Henry decided to sort through the few belongings he had brought from her apartment. Among worn clothes and some personal items, he found a worn leather pouch. Opening it, his fingers touched something rigid, an old photograph. Henry carefully removed the photo, his eyes widening as he examined the yellowed image. In it, two young women smiled at the camera, arms around each other in front of a Christmas tree. One was unmistakably a younger Elise Dawson, the other— "My God," Henry murmured, his heart racing. "Mom!" The resemblance was undeniable. The woman next to Elise was the living image of Margaret Dunn, Henry's deceased mother. But how was that possible? His mother had never mentioned knowing Elise, let alone being close friends. With trembling hands, Henry turned the photo over. On the back, a faded inscription, "Christmas 1975. Margaret and Elise, friends forever." Henry's mind spun 1975. He had been only 5 years old. Fragmented memories surfaced. His mother going out frequently, mentioning a special friend, his father growing increasingly irritable. "Mr. Dunn?" The nurse's voice pulled him out of his thoughts. "Mrs. Dawson is waking up." Henry quickly pocketed the photo, promising himself he would investigate later. Approaching the bed, he saw Elise's eyes opening slowly. Marie? She asked, her voice weak but clear. Henry felt the weight of the lie in his throat. She couldn't come yet, Mr. Dawson. But she wants you to get well soon. Elise nodded weakly, seeming to accept the explanation. Yet her eyes had a lucid sparkle that made Henry wonder how long he could delay the truth. You look so much like her, Elise murmured, surprising Henry. Like who? He asked, his heart pounding. Margaret, Elise replied, her eyes closing again. Your mother. Before Henry could react, Elise drifted back to sleep, leaving him stunned by the confirmation that there was indeed a connection between the two women. Leaving the room in a state of confusion, Henry was approached by his assistant, Claire, who seemed agitated. Mr. Dunn, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have an urgent situation at the company, she said, handing him a tablet. Our main investors are threatening to pull out, the stocks are plummeting, and rumors of financial irregularities are circulating in the media. Henry looked at the graphs and headlines on the tablet, feeling a wave of nausea. How could his once solid company be collapsing so quickly, and why now? This makes no sense, Claire, he murmured, running a hand through his hair. Our internal audits never showed any irregularities. Where are these accusations coming from? Claire shook her head, looking equally perplexed. We don't know, sir. It seems someone is deliberately spreading false information, but we can't trace the source. Henry felt a chill down his spine. First Marie's accident, now this. Could there be a connection? Claire, I need you to do something for me, Henry said, his voice low and intense. I want you to discreetly investigate any link between our company and the Dawson family. And also, look for any mention of my mother, Margaret Dunn, in our old records. Claire looked surprised, but nodded. Of course, sir. But may I ask why? Henry hesitated, glancing back at Elise's room. I have a feeling that there's more to this story than we can see. Hold secrets that may be coming back to haunt us. As Claire walked away to carry out his orders, Henry returned to Elise's room, the photo burning in his pocket like a secret about to be revealed. Sitting next to the bed, he watched the wrinkled face of the woman who was somehow connected to his past. Who was Elise Dawson really? What had happened between her and his mother? And how did it all relate to the current crisis at his company? Henry took the photo from his pocket, studying again the smiling faces of the two young women. There was something in their eyes, an intimacy beyond simple friendship. What had happened to separate them? Why had his mother never mentioned Elise? A soft moan from Elise pulled Henry back to the present. He quickly put the photo away, aware that he was stirring up memories that perhaps should remain buried. But something inside him knew that uncovering this mystery was crucial, not only to understand his own past, but also to protect his future. At that moment, his phone vibrated with a message from Claire. Mr. Dunn, I found something. I need to speak with you immediately. Henry looked at Elise, torn between the desire to stay and the need to discover what Claire had found. Finally, with a heavy sigh, he stood up. I'll be back soon, he promised the sleeping figure of Elise, feeling that he was about to dive into much deeper and more turbulent waters than he had ever imagined. As he left the room, Henry did not notice the slight tremor in Elise's eyelids, nor how her fingers tightened slightly around a small locket hidden beneath the blankets. A locket that, if opened, would reveal a photo twin to the one Henry had just discovered. The secrets of the past were about to surface, and with them a storm threatening to sweep away everything Henry knew. The connection between Elise and his mother, the mysterious crisis in his company, Marie's tragic fate, all these threads began to intertwine into a pattern Henry could not yet discern, but instinctively felt was of vital importance. As he walked through the hospital corridors toward an uncertain future, Henry could not shake the feeling that each step took him deeper into a labyrinth of family secrets and corporate conspiracies. The promise made to Marie now seemed only the tip of a much larger and more dangerous iceberg than he had ever imagined. The weight of past ties and present shadows converged, and Henry knew his life would never be the same again. The search for truth had begun, and there was no turning back. Henry found Claire in a small, empty waiting room, far from curious ears. His assistant's face was pale, her hands trembling slightly as she held a folder. "What did you find, Claire?" Henry asked, his voice low and tense. Claire hesitated before answering. "Mr. Dunn, what I've found, it may change everything." She opened the folder, revealing old documents and photos. "I started by investigating the connection between your mother and Elise Dawson. They weren't just friends, sir. They were practically inseparable during college and the early years after graduation." Henry nodded, suspecting as much due to the photo he found. "Go on." "Then something happened," Claire continued. "In 1976, there are records of a fierce argument between them. After that, all traces of Elise disappear from your mother's life." Henry frowned. What could have caused such a drastic break? Claire hesitated again before handing Henry one particular photo. In it, a young man smiled, his arm around a woman who was not Margaret Dunn. "That's my father," Henry said, immediately recognizing the man. "But who is Elise Dawson's daughter," Claire answered softly. "Juliet Dawson." Henry's world seemed to spin. "Are you saying my father had an affair with the daughter of my mother's best friend?" Claire nodded sadly. "There's more, sir. I found records of a child born 9 months after this photo. A girl." Henry's heart nearly stopped. "Marie," he whispered. "It's possible," Claire confirmed. "We can't be absolutely sure, but the dates match." Henry sank into a nearby chair, his mind in turmoil. Marie, the girl who gave her life to save him, could be his half-sister. Could fate be so cruel and ironic? "That explains why my mother cut ties with Elise," Henry murmured. "She must have discovered the affair." "There's one more thing, sir," Claire said, hesitant. "I found regular bank transfers from your father's personal account to one in Juliet Dawson's name. The payments continued until last week." Henry felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. His father, deceased for 5 years, had secretly supported another family for decades. Before he could fully process this information, Claire's phone rang. She answered, her face paling even more as she listened. "Sir," she said, hanging up. "The media. They're speculating about your involvement in Marie's accident. Someone leaked information about your presence at the scene." Henry felt a wave of nausea. How is that possible? "I did nothing wrong." "It doesn't matter," Claire said softly. "Public perception is everything, and there's more. Our biggest client just cancelled their contract, citing ethical concerns." Henry stood abruptly, pacing the small room. His mind raced, trying to connect the dots. Marie's accident, the family secrets, the corporate crisis. Everything seemed interconnected in some sinister way. "Claire," he said finally, "I need you to do one more thing. Investigate who might benefit from the downfall of our company, and look for any connection to the Dawson family or my own father." Claire nodded, determined. "I'll do it immediately, sir." As she left, Henry returned to Elise's room, his head spinning with revelations. Entering, he found Elise awake, her eyes fixed on him with surprising intensity. "You discovered it, didn't you?" she asked, her voice weak but clear. Henry approached the bed, feeling the weight of decades of secrets between them. "Yes, Elise. I know about my father and your daughter, about Marie." Tears shone in Elise's eyes. "I wanted to tell you, Henry, so many times. But your mother, she made us promise." "Us?" Henry asked, confused. "Your mother and I," Elise explained. "After we found out about the affair, we decided to keep everything secret. To protect the children," she said. "To protect you." Henry felt a surge of contradictory emotions, anger, sadness, compassion. And Marie? Did she know? Elise shook her head. "No. Juliet never told her about her true father. We thought it was better that way." Silence fell heavily between them, laden with regrets and long-held secrets. "Elise," Henry said finally, his voice trembling, "there's something I need to tell you about Marie." But before he could continue, the room's door opened abruptly. A man in a suit entered, followed by several reporters with cameras. "Mr. Dunn," the man said in a cold voice, "I'm Detective Moreau. We have some questions about your involvement in Marie Dawson's death." Henry stood up, placing himself protectively between the intruders and Elise. "How dare you barge into a hospital room? This woman is ill." The detective gave a humorless smile. We have a warrant, Mr. Dunn. And I believe this lady may have crucial information about the case. Camera flashes went off, momentarily blinding Henry. He could hear reporters shouting questions, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of accusations. Mr. Dunn, is it true Marie was your half-sister? Did you know about your father's affair? Why is your company losing contracts? Is there a connection to the accident? Henry felt the world spinning around him. Everything he had worked for, everything he believed in, was collapsing. And at the center of it all, Marie's face, her eyes looking at him in that final moment, asking him to keep his promise that now seemed impossible to fulfill. As chaos unfolded around him, Henry did the only thing he could. He held Elise's hand, determined to protect her, no matter the cost. The family revelations had opened Pandora's box, and now he would have to face the consequences, not just for himself, but for Marie, Elise, and all the truths that had been buried for so long. The chaos following the hospital room invasion seemed endless. Henry struggled to shield Elise from the reporter's harassment and Detective Moreau's probing questions. It took hours and the hospital's security intervention to finally restore some calm. Exhausted and shaken, Henry collapsed into a chair beside Elise's bed. It was then he noticed a silent presence in the room. Isabel, the nurse who had cared for Elise since her admission. "Mr. Dunn," she said softly, "perhaps it would be best if you rested for a while. Could I bring you something to eat or drink?" Henry looked at her, noticing for the first time the kindness in her brown eyes. "Thank you, Isabel, but what I really need now are answers." Isabel nodded understandingly. "I understand, and maybe I can help with that." Intrigued, Henry looked at her. "How?" "Well," she hesitated, "I heard about the suspicions regarding your connection to Marie. If you'd like to confirm it, I can help arrange a discreet DNA test." Henry blinked, surprised by the offer. "You'd do that, but why?" Isabel gave a sad smile. "Because I've seen how you've cared for Miss Dawson, how you're suffering through all this. I believe you deserve to know the truth." Touched by this unexpected compassion, Henry accepted the offer. In the days that followed, while waiting for the test results, Isabel became a constant support for Henry. She not only cared for Elise with dedication, but offered a listening ear when Henry needed to talk. One evening, while Elise slept, Henry and Isabel spoke quietly in the hospital corridor. "How do you cope with it?" Henry asked, his voice heavy with guilt. "Seeing so much suffering every day." Isabel looked at him with understanding. "I learned that we can't carry the weight of the entire world on our shoulders, Henry. We do what we can, with what we have, where we are. But what about when our actions, or lack of them, cause pain to others?" Henry insisted, thinking of Marie. Isabel gently placed her hand on his arm. Then we learn from it. We use that pain as motivation to do better, to be better." Isabel's words touched something deep in Henry. For the first time since the accident, he felt a glimmer of hope, a possibility of redemption. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, reality continued to deteriorate. Claire kept Henry updated on the company's situation, and the news was increasingly alarming. "Sir," she said during one of her visits, "the rumors of mismanagement are spreading like wildfire. Our shareholders are in panic, and 3 more major contracts were cancelled this week." Henry ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "But where are these accusations coming from?" "We have years of clean audits." Claire shook her head, equally perplexed. "It's as if someone is orchestrating all this, sir. But we can't trace the source." The suspicion of a greater conspiracy grew in Henry's mind. Who could have so much to gain from his downfall, and how did it connect with his family's secrets? Finally, after agonizing days, the DNA test results arrived. Henry opened them with trembling hands, Isabel by his side, offering silent support. "Positive," he whispered, feeling the weight of confirmation. "Marie really was my half-sister." Isabel gently squeezed his shoulder. "And now, Henry? What will you do with this information?" Henry looked from the paper in his hands to the room where Elise rested. "I'll honor Marie's memory," he said with renewed determination. "I'll find out the truth behind all of this and do the right thing, no matter the cost." At that moment, Henry's phone rang. It was Claire, her voice urgent on the other end of the line. "Mr. Dunn, something happened. The stock market, our shares have plummeted. They're talking about launching a formal investigation into the company." Henry closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders again. But when he opened them, there was a fierce determination in his gaze. "Claire, call an emergency board meeting. So it's time to face this head-on." Hanging up, Henry turned to Isabel. "I need to go, but I'll be back as soon as I can. Please, take care of Elise." Isabel nodded, her eyes reflecting concern and something else, admiration. "Be careful, Henry. And remember, you're not alone in this fight." With one last grateful look, Henry left, determined to face the storm forming around his company and his life. Driving to the office, his mind was racing with questions. How had his quest for truth about Marie turned into a battle for the survival of everything he'd built? Who was behind the attacks on his company, and why? How did all these seemingly disparate events connect? One thing Henry knew for sure: he could no longer run from the truth. It was time to face the ghosts of the past and the challenges of the present, not just for himself, but for Marie, Elise, and everyone who depended on him. Entering his company's imposing building, Henry felt the weight of curious stares and anxious whispers. The empire he had built was trembling at its foundations, but he was determined not to let it fall without a fight. With firm steps, he headed to the conference room, where he knew a crucial battle awaited him. The revelations of recent days had changed everything, but they had also given Henry a clarity of purpose he had long lacked. As he opened the conference room doors, facing the anxious and accusatory looks of his board, Henry knew he was about to enter the most challenging phase of his life. But, with Marie's memory, Isabel's silent support, and the truth finally coming to light, he felt, for the first time in weeks, ready for the fight ahead. The silence in the hospital room was palpable when Henry entered, holding the DNA test results. Elise, who had awakened from her coma a few days ago, watched him with tired but attentive eyes. Isabel stood by her side, adjusting the IV drip with gentle, efficient movements. Henry took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the paper in his hand. "Elise," he began, his voice trembling, "the results are in. Marie, she really was my half-sister." Elise's eyes filled with tears. "So it's true," she whispered. All those secrets." Henry sat down in the chair beside the bed. "Why, Elise? Why keep this a secret for so long?" Elise closed her eyes, painful memories clearly passing behind her lids. "It was your mother, Margaret. She discovered the affair between your father and my Juliet. She was devastated, furious. She threatened to expose everything, destroy all our reputations." Henry felt a pang of pain thinking of his mother, who had died years ago carrying this secret. "And then, we made a deal," Elise continued, her voice weak. "Margaret wouldn't tell anyone, but she demanded that we stay completely away. Juliet, she decided to raise Marie alone, away from all this. And I lost my best friend and part of my family in the process." Silence fell as Henry absorbed the magnitude of these revelations. So many lives affected, so many years of pain and secrets, all culminating in that tragic night when Marie gave her life to save his. "Elise," Henry said softly, "there's something I need to tell you about Marie." But before he could continue, Elise interrupted him, her eyes suddenly focused and alert. "Henry, I recognized you the moment I saw you. You are the image of your father when he was young. And now, seeing you here, caring for me, it's as if past and present have merged." Henry felt a knot in his throat. "I'm sorry, Elise, for everything, for what my father did, for the suffering he caused your family." Elise reached out a trembling hand, touching Henry's face. "No, my dear, you're not responsible for your parents' mistakes. And seeing you here, caring for an old woman you didn't know, it gives me hope. It shows that something good can come from even the most painful situations." At that moment, Isabel, who had kept a discreet distance, approached. "Mr. Dunn, Elise needs to rest now. Maybe we can continue this conversation later." Henry nodded, grateful for Isabel's gentle intervention. He stood, gently kissing Elise's forehead. "Rest. I'll be back soon." Leaving the room with Isabel, Henry felt the weight of all the recent revelations. They walked in silence to a small lounge at the end of the corridor. "How are you handling all of this, Henry?" Isabel asked softly, offering him a cup of water. Henry took a sip before answering. "Honestly, I don't know. It's as if my entire life, everything I believed in, is being rewritten." Isabel placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You're doing the best you can in an impossible situation. That's more than many would do." Henry looked at her, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, Isabel, for everything. I don't know how I would have faced all this without you." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to slow. Henry felt a connection with Isabel that went beyond gratitude, a mutual understanding, a comfort in each other's presence he hadn't felt in a long time. The moment was interrupted by the ringing of Henry's phone. It was Claire, her voice tense on the other end of the line. "Mr. Dunn, we have a problem. The press is speculating about possible links between Marie's accident and the company's financial difficulties. Some are suggesting there may be a criminal investigation soon." Henry closed his eyes, feeling the pressure mount again. "Thank you, Claire. I'll be at the office in an hour." Hanging up, he turned to Isabel, who watched him with concern. "I have to go. Things at the company are complicated." Isabel nodded, understanding. "Go. I'll take care of Elise. But, Henry, don't forget to take care of yourself too." Henry gave a faint smile, touched by her concern. "Thank you, Isabel. I don't know what I'd do without you right now." On the way to the parking lot, Henry couldn't help reflecting on how drastically his life had changed in such a short time. The discovery about Marie, the family secrets revealed, the crisis at the company. Everything seemed interconnected in some mysterious and potentially dangerous way. Driving to the office, his mind buzzed with questions. How could the truth about his relationship to Marie affect the investigation into the accident? Who was behind the attacks on his company, and why? How were all these events connected? Reaching his corporation's imposing building, Henry was greeted by nervous looks and whispers from employees. Tension hung heavy in the air. Claire found him in the elevator, her face a mask of professional concern. "Mr. Dunn, the board is demanding an emergency meeting. They want explanations about, well, everything." Henry nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "We'll face this head-on, Claire. It's time to put all the cards on the table." Heading to the conference room, Henry knew he was about to face one of the greatest challenges of his life, but for the first time since that fateful accident, he felt a clarity of purpose. The truth, no matter how painful, was the only path forward. With a final thought for Elise in the hospital, for Marie's memory, and for Isabel's silent support, Henry opened the doors of the conference room, ready to face whatever came next. The weight of truth was immense, but Henry was determined to carry it, not just for himself, but for all those who had been affected by decades of secrets and lies. It was time to break the cycle, no matter the cost. Morning dawned grey and cold, a perfect reflection of Henry's mood as he arrived at the office. He had barely stepped into the lobby when he was bombarded by camera flashes and shouting reporters. "Mr. Dunn, is it true the girl who died was your half-sister? Henry, did you know about your father's affair before the accident? Is Dunn Enterprises involved in a money laundering scheme?" Claire appeared as if by magic, escorting Henry through the crowd to the private elevator. Once inside, away from prying eyes, Henry slumped against the wall. "How?" he began, his voice trembling. "How did they find out?" Claire shook her head, her face a mask of worry. "We don't know, sir. The story leaked last night. It's everywhere." The elevator reached the executive floor, and Henry was immediately greeted by a team of lawyers and PR advisors, all talking at once. "Mr. Dunn, we need to issue a statement immediately. The shareholders are panicking. The stock has dropped 30% since the market opened. 3 of our largest clients cancelled their contracts in the last 2 hours." Henry raised his hands, asking for silence. "One at a time, please. First, I want to know exactly what the press is saying." One of the PR advisors, a middle-aged woman named Sarah, stepped forward. "Sir, the main story is your relationship to Marie Dawson. but there are also speculations about financial motives behind the accident. Some tabloids are suggesting that you orchestrated the accident to cover up irregularities in the company. Henry felt as though he'd been punched in the gut. That's absurd. How can they even suggest such a thing? Unfortunately, sir, Sarah continued, the timing of the accident, coinciding with the first signs of financial trouble, is fueling these conspiracy theories. Over the next few moments, Henry was informed of the full extent of the damage. In addition to the stock plunge and lost contracts, several board members were demanding his immediate resignation. While the team debated damage control strategies, Henry's phone vibrated. It was a message from Isabel. "Elise has seen the news. She's agitated and wants to speak to you urgently." Henry's heart tightened. Amid the chaos, he had almost forgotten Elise and the impact these revelations would have on her. "Claire," he said, interrupting the heated discussion, "I need to go to the hospital. Elise, she needs me." Ignoring the protests of his team, Henry left in a hurry, using the emergency exit to avoid reporters. At the hospital, he found Elise sitting up in bed, the TV remote still trembling in her hands. Her face was pale, marked by recent tears. "Henry," she whispered upon seeing him. "Oh, Henry, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault, because of our secrets." Henry rushed to her side, taking her hands. "No, Elise, it's not your fault. No one could have predicted this." Elise shook her head, her eyes full of ancient sadness. "There's more, Henry. Things you need to know." In the following minutes, Elise revealed darker details about the past. The affair between Henry's father and Juliet hadn't just been a forbidden romance. It had also involved suspicious financial transactions. "Your father," Elise explained, her voice trembling, "he used the relationship with Juliet to hide money, transfers, shell companies. I didn't know everything, but Margaret found out. That's why she demanded our silence. It wasn't just about the affair, it was about protecting the company, protecting you." Henry felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. His father, the man he had always seen as a role model of integrity, had been involved in illegal activities. "Elise," he asked, fearing the answer, "do you think this has something to do with what's happening now with the company?" Elise hesitated. "I don't know, Henry, but I fear the ghosts of the past may have returned to haunt us all." While processing these new revelations, Henry's phone rang again. Claire's urgent voice greeted him. "Mr. Dunn, we found something. You need to come back immediately." Back at the office, Henry was taken to an isolated conference room. Claire and 2 IT team members waited, their faces tense. "What did you discover?" Henry asked, feeling the tension in the air. One of the IT technicians, a young man named Alex, turned his laptop toward Henry. "Sir, we found evidence of unauthorized access to our financial systems. Someone has been manipulating data, creating the appearance of irregularities where none existed." Henry felt a mixture of relief and fury. "So it's sabotage, but who and why?" Claire intervened, her voice grave. "We still don't know, sir, but there's more. We found that these invasions started on the night of Marie's accident." Henry's mind whirled. The connection between the accident and the company's problems was no coincidence. Someone was orchestrating all of this, using his personal tragedy as a smokescreen to attack Dunn Enterprises. "We need to go to the police," Henry declared, but Claire interrupted him. "Sir, I'm afraid it's not that simple. Whoever's doing this has insider access, someone who knows not just our systems, but also your family's secrets." Realization struck Henry like lightning. The enemy wasn't just outside, but possibly inside his own organization, maybe even within his closest circle. At that moment, looking at his worried team, Henry felt the full weight of the scandal and the looming collapse. His reputation was in shreds, his company on the brink, and now he discovered a traitor in their midst. But amid chaos and despair, Henry felt a fierce determination grow inside him. He would not let the mistakes of the past or the machinations of the present destroy everything he and so many others had worked for. "Claire," he said, his voice firm, "assemble a trusted team. We'll find out who's behind this, and we'll clear Dunn Enterprises' name, no matter the cost." As the others left to carry out his orders, Henry remained alone in the conference room, the weight of the world on his shoulders. He thought of Marie, Elise, Isabel, and all the employees whose futures depended on him. "I won't let you down," he promised quietly. "I'll fix this no matter what it takes." The scandal may have shaken his reputation, and the downfall seemed imminent, but Henry Dunn was far from defeated. The battle for truth and redemption was only beginning. Henry's office, once a symbol of power and success, now looked like a besieged fortress. Stacks of financial reports, newspaper headlines, and legal notices covered every available surface. At the center of it all, Henry Dunn sat, his eyes fixed on a photograph of Marie he had obtained from Elise. "What would you do, little one?" he murmured to the image of the smiling girl he never truly got to know. "How can we fix this?" A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Isabel, carrying a tray with coffee and sandwiches. "I thought you might need this," she said, placing the tray in the only clear spot on the desk. "You've barely left this place in the last few days." Henry smiled weakly, grateful for her concern. "Thank you, Isabel. I don't know what I'd do without you." Isabel sat across from him, her eyes full of concern. "Henry, you can't go on like this. You're destroying yourself." He sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "What else can I do? The company is collapsing. My reputation is in tatters, and we still don't know who's behind all this." Isabel was silent for a moment, her gaze falling on Marie's photo. "Maybe," she began hesitantly, "maybe it's time to change tactics. To remember why all this started." Henry followed her gaze, feeling a pang in his heart at Marie's face. "What do you mean?" "Marie gave her life to save you, Henry. Not just your physical life, but maybe she saved your soul too. Look at everything you've discovered, everything that's changed since that night. Maybe it's time to truly honor her sacrifice." Isabel's words hit Henry like a ray of clarity in the storm. He stood abruptly, an idea forming in his mind. "Isabel, you're brilliant," he exclaimed, a spark of hope in his eyes for the first time in weeks. "That's it. We can't just fight the shadows of the past. We need to create something new, something that really makes a difference." In the days that followed, Henry worked tirelessly on a new project. Between tense meetings with lawyers and investigators, he devoted every spare moment to shaping his vision. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. The tension was palpable in the room when Henry entered, carrying a thick folder under his arm. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice firm despite the nervousness he felt, "I know you're all here expecting my resignation, but before we make any decisions, I ask that you hear me out." Henry opened the folder, distributing documents to each board member. "What I have here is a proposal to create the Murray Dawson Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping vulnerable children, offering education, healthcare, and opportunities they would otherwise never have." A murmur of surprise ran through the room. The board's chairman, a middle-aged man named Robert, was the first to speak. "Henry, I understand your feeling of guilt about what happened, but we can't divert company resources at this critical time." Henry shook his head, determined. "This isn't just about guilt, Robert. It's about doing what's right, about creating a positive legacy from this tragedy. And more than that, it's about saving this company." He continued, explaining how the foundation could not only help children in need, but also restore Dunn Enterprises' public image, attracting new investors and partners who valued corporate social responsibility. "Moreover," Henry added, his voice gaining strength, "I believe this foundation can help us uncover the truth behind the attacks on our company. Whoever's behind this clearly has a connection to my family's past. By shining a light on these shadows, we may finally expose the real culprits." The room fell silent for long moments after Henry's presentation. Finally, one of the younger board members, Emily, spoke up. "It's risky, but I support it. I think this is exactly the radical change we need." Others began to agree, albeit hesitantly. Robert, however, remained skeptical. "And where will the money come from, Henry? We're on the brink of bankruptcy." Henry took a deep breath before answering. "I will invest my personal fortune to start the foundation, every cent I have, if necessary." The statement caused a stir in the room. While members of the board argued heatedly, Henry felt his phone vibrate. It was a message from Isabel. Whatever the outcome, I'm proud of you. Marie would be too. Those words gave Henry the final strength he needed. When the vote finally took place, the proposal was approved by a narrow margin. Leaving the conference room, exhausted but relieved, Henry was met by Claire, who awaited him with urgent news. "Sir, while you were in the meeting, our IT team made a discovery. The intrusions into our systems, they're not just internal. There are signs of involvement from a rival corporation, Blackstone Industries." Henry felt a chill run down his spine. Blackstone Industries was run by Victor Blackstone, an old business rival of his father. "Claire, I need you to dig into everything about Blackstone. Any connection to my family, to the Dawsons, anything." As Claire left to fulfill his orders, Henry couldn't help feeling that he was getting closer to something big, something that went far beyond corporate rivalries or family secrets. That night, back at the hospital to visit Elise, Henry shared the news about the foundation. The elderly woman's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. "Marie would be so proud, Henry," she said, holding his hand. "You're turning your loss into something beautiful." Isabel, who was in the room caring for Elise, smiled warmly at Henry. "I knew you'd find the right path." Observing these two women who had become so important in his life, Henry felt a mix of determination and apprehension. Marie's legacy was taking shape, offering hope and purpose. But the shadows of the conspiracy he was beginning to glimpse seemed darker and more dangerous than ever. "No matter what happens," Henry silently vowed, "I will see this through. For Marie's memory, for the truth, and for all the children we can help." The road ahead was uncertain and certainly perilous, but for the first time in weeks, Henry Dunn felt he was finally on the right track. The day Henry Dunn had feared finally arrived. Under a grim and oppressive sky, he watched helplessly as the company's lawyers filed for bankruptcy protection in court. Headlines screamed from every newspaper and news channel, "Dunn Empire crumbles," "End of an era," "From glory to ruin, Henry Dunn's fall." In the nearly empty office, Henry faced the painful task of laying off loyal employees who had been by his side for years. Each devastated face, each trembling handshake was a stab to his heart. "I'm so sorry, truly sorry," he repeated, his voice choked. "I'll do what I can to help you find new positions." Claire, faithful to the end, remained by his side, organizing final details and managing the torrent of calls and emails that never ceased. "Sir," she said softly, after the last employee left, "there are reporters in the lobby. They're demanding a statement." Henry sighed heavily, running his hand over his tired face. "Let's get it over with." Descending to the lobby, Henry was met by a crowd of microphones and cameras. The questions came like bullets. "Mr. Dunn, how do you explain the total collapse of your company? There are allegations of fraud and mismanagement. What do you have to say? Is it true you're selling all your properties?" Henry raised his hands, asking for silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, but charged with emotion. "I take full responsibility for what happened to Dunn Enterprises. Mistakes were made, wrong decisions taken, but I can assure you there was no fraud or ill intent. We are fully cooperating with all investigations." He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "As for the future, yes, I am selling my personal properties, but not to run or hide. All the money will be directed to the newly created Marie Dawson Foundation, dedicated to helping vulnerable children. It's my hope that we can turn this tragedy into something positive for those who need it most." The reactions were immediate and varied. Some reporters looked skeptical, others intrigued. But before more questions could be asked, Henry withdrew, exhausted and emotionally drained. Back in his office, he found Isabel waiting for him. Her face was full of concern and compassion. "I saw the news," she said softly. "How are you holding up?" Henry slumped into his chair, feeling the weight of all he had lost. "Honestly, I don't know. It feels like my entire life fell apart in a matter of weeks." Isabel approached, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "But not everything is lost, Henry. You still have a purpose, a mission. The Marie Foundation can be the new start you need." Her words touched something deep in Henry. He looked at Marie's photo on his desk, remembering the promise he had made. "You're right," he said, a new determination in his voice. I can't give up now. There's too much work to be done. In the following days, Henry threw himself wholeheartedly into preparations for launching the Marie Foundation. As the media continued to attack him and former associates abandoned him, he found strength in his new purpose. One afternoon, as he worked in his makeshift office, a small rented space downtown, Henry received an unexpected visit. It was Victor Blackstone, CEO of Blackstone Industries and his father's old rival. "Henry," Victor said, his voice a mix of condescension and false sympathy, "I came personally to express my condolences for your current situation." Henry stood, facing the man he suspected was behind some of his troubles. "Thank you, Victor. But something tells me condolences aren't the real reason for your visit." Victor smiled, a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Perceptive, as always. In fact, I'm here with an offer. Blackstone Industries is interested in buying what's left of Dunn Enterprises. For a fraction of the value, of course, given the circumstances." Henry felt anger rising in his chest but remained composed. "I'm sorry, Victor, but there's nothing to sell. Everything that remains is being directed to the Marie Foundation." Victor's smile faltered momentarily. "Ah yes, your little charity. A noble gesture, no doubt. But come on, Henry, be realistic. What do you know about running a foundation? Why not leave that to the professionals and focus on, shall we say, rebuilding your reputation?" Victor's words, though spoken with false concern, carried a veiled threat that Henry did not miss. "I appreciate your concern, Victor," Henry replied, his voice firm, "but my decision is made. The Marie Foundation is my priority now. And as for my reputation, I'll let my actions speak for themselves." Victor narrowed his eyes, all pretense of cordiality gone. "You're making a mistake, Henry. There are forces at play you do not understand. It would be wiser to accept my offer and step away." "I'm perfectly aware of the forces at play, Victor," Henry retorted, stepping forward. "And rest assured, I won't step away until I find out the whole truth." For a moment, the two men stared at each other, tension thick in the air. Finally, Victor turned to leave. "You were warned, Henry. Whatever happens now is on you." After Victor's departure, Henry sat down, his mind racing. The visit only confirmed his suspicions of a larger conspiracy. But now, more than ever, he was determined to move forward. The next morning, Henry stood before his last personal property, the family's summer home, a place filled with childhood memories. With a lump in his throat, he signed the sale papers. "Are you sure about this, sir?" the broker asked, hesitant. Henry looked one last time at the house before answering, "Absolutely. Sometimes we have to leave the past behind to build a better future." With the sales proceeds secured, Henry called a press conference to officially announce the launch of the Marie Dawson Foundation. By his side were Isabel, Elise, who had been discharged from the hospital, and Claire, who had chosen to stay with Henry despite everything. Facing cameras and microphones, Henry spoke with a passion and conviction that surprised even his harshest critics. "Today, we are not just launching a foundation. We are planting the seed of a better future for countless children. Marie Dawson's name will not be remembered for tragedy, but for the hope and opportunities we will provide in her memory." As Henry detailed the foundation's plans, Isabel watched with pride the man he had become. Elise, tears in her eyes, held Henry's hand, feeling that finally something good was emerging from so many years of secrets and pain. At the end of the conference, a young reporter asked one last question. "Mr. Dunn, after losing everything, how do you find the strength to start over?" Henry smiled, a genuine smile that lit his tired face. "I haven't lost everything. I gained a purpose, a mission. And as long as there's a child to help, a truth to uncover, I'll keep moving forward." That night, alone in his modest rented apartment, Henry looked out the window at the city he once dominated. The ruin of his empire was complete, but from the ashes, a new beginning was born. With Marie's photo in one hand and the foundation's plans in the other, Henry made a silent promise. "No matter what happens, no matter who stands against us, we will make a difference. This is only the beginning, Marie. Your legacy will live on and the truth will come to light. I promise." A year had passed since the fateful night that forever changed Henry Dunn's life. The Marie Foundation's headquarters, a modest building downtown, bustled with activity. Children laughed in the halls, volunteers came and went with purpose, and at the center of it all stood Henry, transformed by the mission he had embraced. "Mr. Dunn," called a young voice. It was Amélie, one of the first children the foundation helped. "Look, I passed the admission exam for the technical school." Henry smiled, genuinely happy. "Congratulations, Amélie. I'm so proud of you." Moments like this kept Henry going, despite the constant difficulties. The foundation thrived, but not without obstacles. Donations were hard to come by. The shadow of the scandal still lingered, and Henry often wondered if he'd ever fully clear his name. That afternoon, as he reviewed reports in his office, Claire rushed in, her face pale. "Sir, this just arrived for you," she said, handing him a plain envelope with no return address. Intrigued, Henry opened it. Inside was only a flash drive and a handwritten note. "The truth you seek is here. Use it wisely." Heart racing, Henry inserted the drive into his computer. What followed were hours of frantic reading as a web of conspiracy unfolded before his eyes. Encrypted emails, hidden financial records, audio recordings. Everything pointed to a shocking truth. Marie's accident wasn't an accident at all. It had been a deliberate attempt on Henry's life. "My God," Henry murmured, feeling nauseated. "They were trying to kill me." But the conspiracy ran deeper. The documents revealed a meticulous plan orchestrated by Victor Blackstone and other business rivals. They had manipulated Dunn Enterprises' finances for years, setting the stage for its fall. The accident was meant to be the final blow, eliminating Henry and allowing them to take over the bankrupt company. Henry called Claire and Isabel, now an integral partner in the foundation. Together they spent the night analyzing the evidence. "This explains everything," Claire said, shocked. "The hacking, the lost contracts, even the rumors in the media. It was all orchestrated." Isabel, observing Henry closely, noticed the internal struggle in his eyes. "What will you do with this information, Henry?" It was the question echoing in Henry's mind. With this evidence, he could clear his name, restore his reputation, maybe even rebuild his company. But at what cost? "If I expose this," Henry said slowly, "it will shake the corporate world. Many companies will fall, jobs will be lost. And the foundation, how will it affect our work?" The dilemma consumed him for days. Henry barely slept, weighing his options. On one hand, the chance for justice and vindication. On the other, the risk of compromising everything he'd built in Marie's name. One afternoon, as he walked through the foundation's courtyard, watching the children play, Henry felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Elise, who visited frequently. "You seem troubled, my dear," she said softly. "What burdens your heart?" Henry hesitated before sharing his dilemma. Elise listened attentively, her wise eyes reflecting understanding. "Henry," she said finally, "Marie gave her life to save you. Not just your body, but your soul. Look around you. See the good you've done in her name. That's what really matters." Elise's words resonated deeply. Henry realized he stood before a crucial choice: pursue revenge and personal justification, or truly honor Marie's sacrifice by continuing the work he had begun. That night, Henry called a meeting with his closest team, Claire and Isabel, and a few trusted advisors of the foundation. "I have a decision to share with you," he began, his voice firm. "We discovered the truth behind the accident and the company's downfall. We have proof of a massive conspiracy." The room fell silent as everyone waited for his next words. But Henry continued, "We will not publicly expose this information, at least not yet." There were exclamations of surprise and confusion. Claire was the first to speak. "But sir, this could clear your name, recover everything we lost." Henry nodded. "Yes, it could, but it could also harm the work we're doing here. The foundation, the children we help. Everything could be jeopardized if we get entangled in a legal and media battle." He paused, looking at each face in the room. "Instead, we'll use this information strategically. We'll quietly pressure those involved, make them accountable in a way that won't harm innocents. And most importantly, we'll use this knowledge to protect the foundation and expand our work. Isabel, who had been quiet until now, spoke. "You're choosing Marie's legacy over your own vindication." Henry smiled softly. "I'm choosing the future Marie gave us a chance to build." In the following days, Henry worked tirelessly. He made discreet contact with trustworthy authorities, sharing information selectively. He applied silent pressure on those involved in the conspiracy, not to destroy them, but to ensure continuous support for the foundation and other noble causes. A month after his decision, Henry was in his office when Isabel entered, holding a newspaper. "Have you seen this?" she asked, showing him the headline. "Blackstone Industries announces scholarships for underprivileged children." Henry smiled, recognizing the result of his behind-the-scenes negotiations. "It's a start," he said. Isabel approached, her eyes shining with admiration. "You're truly changing things, Henry. Not through revenge or exposure, but through transformation." That night, alone in his apartment, Henry looked out the window at the city that once knew him as a titan of business. He picked up Marie's photo, now always on his desk. "I hope I'm doing the right thing, Marie," he whispered. "Your sacrifice gave us the chance to create something truly good. And I promise, I'll keep fighting for it every day." As the city slept, Henry Dunn felt, for the first time in a long while, a true peace. The conspiracy had been revealed, but the real victory lay not in public exposure or vengeance. It lay in the lives being changed, the legacy being built day by day. The journey was far from over, but Henry now knew with certainty that he was on the right path, the path Marie had shown him with her final act of courage and love. The months following the discovery of the conspiracy tested Henry Dunn's patience and strategy. Working behind the scenes with a select group of trustworthy authorities, he meticulously pieced together the puzzle that would reveal the full extent of the scheme against him and his company. In a secure room at the police department, Henry met regularly with Detective Sophie Leclerc, an incorruptible investigator known for her tenacity. "Mr. Dunn," Sophie said in one of these meetings, spreading documents across the table, "with the evidence you provided and our independent investigation, we are ready to act. But I must be sure, are you prepared for the consequences? This will shake the corporate world." Henry nodded gravely. "I'm ready, Detective Leclerc. It's time for the truth to come out." In the following weeks, a series of coordinated police operations rocked the city. High-level executives were arrested, offices searched, and a mountain of evidence seized. With each passing day, shocking new revelations dominated the headlines. Corporate conspiracy exposed, attempted murder and financial sabotage. Victor Blackstone arrested, CEO accused of orchestrating Dunn Enterprises' downfall. Years-long scheme revealed. How an empire was toppled by envy and greed. The world watched in astonishment as the truth emerged layer by layer. The attempt on Henry's life, disguised as a tragic accident, was exposed in detail. The financial manipulation that led to Dunn Enterprises' bankruptcy was meticulously documented. Amid the chaos, Henry remained focused on the Marie Foundation, refusing interviews or public statements. But as the truth emerged, public perception began to shift dramatically. One morning, as Henry arrived at the foundation, he was surprised by a crowd of reporters and cameras. Reluctantly, he decided to make a brief statement. "Over the last year, I've devoted myself entirely to the Marie Foundation and the children we serve," he began, his voice steady. "So the recent revelations are shocking and painful, but my focus remains on the work we do here. Justice is taking its course, and I trust the authorities to handle those responsible." His dignity and dedication impressed many, and a wave of public support began to grow. Former clients and business partners reached out, expressing regret and offering support. One quiet afternoon at the foundation, Henry received an unexpected visit. It was Robert, the former chairman of Dunn Enterprises board. "Henry," Robert said, visibly emotional, "I came to apologize. We all failed you, believed the lies without question. And now, well, there's something I must tell you." Robert explained that with the conspiracy exposed, Dunn Enterprises was undergoing restructuring. The shareholders and the new board had unanimously voted to invite Henry to return and take control of the company. Henry remained silent for a long moment, the offer heavy in his mind. Finally, he spoke. "Robert, I appreciate the offer and your words, but I need time to think. My life has changed so much this past year." That night, Henry discussed the situation with Isabel and Elise, the two women who had become his closest confidants. "It's an incredible opportunity, Henry," Isabel said. "You could do so much good with the company's resources." Elise, and with her quiet wisdom, added, "Remember why all this started, my dear. What would Marie want you to do?" After days of reflection, Henry made his decision. He called a press conference, the first since the scandal broke. Before a room packed with journalists, Henry spoke with a clarity and emotion that captivated everyone. "A year ago, I lost everything I thought was important, my company, my reputation, my fortune. But on that tragic night, I gained something far more valuable, a purpose. Marie Dawson didn't just save my life. She gave me a reason to live." He paused, looking directly into the cameras. "Today, I've been offered the chance to return to Dunn Enterprises. After much thought, I've decided to accept, but with one condition. The company will be restructured to work in tandem with the Marie Foundation. Every business decision, every profit, will be evaluated not only by its financial value, but by its impact on society and the lives of the children we've sworn to protect." The room erupted in questions, but Henry raised his hand, asking for silence for his final words. "What happened to me and my company was a terrible injustice. But from tragedy, we've been given the opportunity to do good on a scale I never imagined. This is my redemption, not just to reclaim what I lost, but to use it to create a better future for those who need it most." In the days that followed, Henry Dunn's story dominated the news. His journey from disgraced magnate to dedicated philanthropist, and now back to the corporate world with a renewed mission, inspired millions. As Henry prepared to reassume his role at Dunn Enterprises, now with a renewed purpose, he paid one last visit to Marie's grave. Placing fresh flowers, he whispered, "Thank you, Marie, for saving my life, for giving me a purpose, and for teaching me the true meaning of redemption. I promise your legacy will live on in every life we touch." With one last look at the headstone, Henry turned to face his future, no longer a man seeking to regain what he'd lost, but one determined to create something much bigger and more meaningful than he'd ever dreamed. Snow fell gently over the city, covering it with a silent white mantle. It was Christmas Eve, exactly 2 years after the night that changed everything in Henry Dunn's life. The Dunn Enterprises office, now shared with the Marie Foundation, was quiet. Most employees already home with their families. Henry stood alone in his office, contemplating the city through the panoramic window. On his desk lay 2 documents awaiting his signature, an aggressive expansion plan for the company and a proposal to double the Marie Foundation's budget next year. Picking up his pen, Henry hesitated a moment. The last 2 years had been a roller coaster of emotions and challenges. The company was recovering quickly, and growth opportunities were tempting. But the Foundation's work, the lives they were changing, that's what truly made his heart race. With a determined smile, Henry signed the Foundation proposal first. "This is what really matters," he murmured to himself. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Isabel, her face lit by a warm smile. "I knew I'd find you here," she said, approaching. "It's time to go. Elise is waiting for us." Henry smiled, putting the documents away. "Of course, we can't keep our guest of honor waiting, can we?" Together, they left the office, hands naturally entwined. Their relationship had slowly blossomed over the past 2 years, strengthened by the trials and triumphs they shared. The wedding ceremony was intimate and emotional, held in the small chapel of the hospital, where Elise still received regular treatments. The elderly woman, now a maternal figure to both Henry and Isabel, watched them with tearful eyes of happiness. When the priest pronounced Henry and Isabel husband and wife, the small gathering of guests, mostly children and staff from the Foundation, erupted in enthusiastic applause. After the ceremony, as the guests headed to a modest reception, Henry approached Elise. "How are you feeling?" he asked, gently holding her hand. Elise smiled, her eyes bright. Happier than I ever thought I could be again, my dear, seeing you and Isabel together, seeing all that you've built. Marie would be so proud. The mention of Marie brought a moment of reflective silence. Henry nodded, his voice soft. I hope so. All this time is because of her. Isabel joined them, giving Elise a loving hug. Come on, our guest of honor deserves the first piece of cake. The reception was joyful and relaxed. Foundation children ran among the adults, their laughter echoing in the room. Henry watched it all with a feeling of fulfillment and gratitude. Later that night, after taking Elise back to the hospital and bidding Isabel goodnight with a kiss, Henry made one last stop. The cemetery was quiet, the fresh snow shimmering under the moonlight. Standing before Marie's grave, Henry knelt, carefully clearing the snow from the headstone. Hello, Marie, he began, his voice gentle in the silent night. I'm sorry I haven't come sooner. The past months have been intense. He paused, gathering his thoughts. 2 years ago tonight, you saved my life. At the time, I thought I had lost everything. I had no idea I was gaining something far more precious. A purpose. Henry smiled, remembering all that had happened. The foundation is growing, Marie. We're helping more children than I ever dreamed possible. And the company, well, we're using it to do good on an even larger scale. He took a small gold star from his pocket, placing it carefully on the headstone. Isabel and I got married today. Elise was there. She's become like a grandmother to both of us. Funny how life works, isn't it? In a way, you brought us all together. The snow began to fall harder, and Henry pulled his coat tighter around himself. You know, Marie, I spent a lot of time wondering why things happened the way they did, why you were on that corner that night, why you chose to save a stranger. But now I understand that some questions have no answers. What matters is what we do with the chances we're given. He stood up, gently touching the headstone one last time. I promise you, Marie, I will continue honoring your sacrifice every day. Your last Christmas wish, to care for your grandmother, has grown into something much greater. We're caring for hundreds of children now, giving them opportunities you never had. And this is only the beginning. Henry looked at the night sky, snowflakes dancing around him. Thank you, Marie, for saving my life, for changing my destiny, for teaching me the true spirit of Christmas. It's not in gifts or parties, but in love, sacrifice, and the ability to make a difference in others' lives. With a final look at the grave, Henry turned to leave. As he walked through the snow, he felt a deep peace he hadn't known in a long time. The road ahead would still be challenging, but he knew he was moving in the right direction. Arriving home, he found Isabel waiting for him, 2 cups of hot chocolate in her hands. "Merry Christmas, my love," she said softly. Henry embraced her, feeling the warmth of her love and the weight of his responsibility. "Merry Christmas, Isabel. We have so much work to do tomorrow." As the city slept under the snowy blanket, Henry Dunn knew this Christmas Eve marked not just the anniversary of a tragedy, but the start of something truly beautiful. Marie's spirit, her last Christmas wish, lived on in every life the foundation touched, in every decision made by the company, and in every act of kindness inspired by her story. And so, with a heart full of gratitude and purpose, Henry prepared for another year of making a difference, one day at a time, honoring the legacy of a little match seller who changed the world with a simple act of courage.